এভাবে যেটা বলতে চাচ্ছিলাম যে today's session is very valuable for you and it is actually review session, overall discussion session, thread discussion session ইংরেজিতে বলে এগুলো, অর্থাৎ intensively and closely reaching upon the students and also fill up the gap situations. আমি বাংলা ইংরেজি মিলাই বলি, শুনতে ভালো লাগবে এবং তাড়াতাড়ি আমার জন্য সুবিধা, আপনাদের জন্য বুঝতে সুবিধা। But I also mentioned here is the medium of instruction that means for free education, English, my dear all, my brothers and sisters, যারা আছেন respected and dearest and little also, ইংরেজিতে আপনাকে উত্তর করতে হবে। এখন আমাদের সার্টিফিকেট লেভেল যেটা, সেটা কম্পিউটার বেসড অনলাইন এক্সাম, এজন্য আপনাকে অতটা ইংরেজি লিখতে হবে না, বাট আপনার ক্লাস যেটা এটা অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। পরীক্ষায় অংশগ্রহণের জন্য দুটো জিনিস ম্যান্ডেটরি, এগুলো খুব মন দিয়ে শুনবেন। এবং আই অলসো রিকোয়েস্ট আওয়ার ডিয়ার ক্যাপ্টেন্স ইনক্লুডিং অল কনভে অ্যাবসেন্ট স্টুডেন্টস অথবা রেকর্ডটা শুনিয়ে দেবেন। এগুলো এইভাবে কেউ বলে না, হয়তো বলবে না, অথবা এইভাবে হয়তো আপনারা পাবেনও না। আমরা কাজ করি তো এই জন্য সবকিছু আমাদের জানা থাকে এবং আমরা বুঝে যাই যে ছাত্ররা কি চায়, কিভাবে তারা বুঝলে শুনতে থাকে, এই জন্য এভাবে বলে থাকি। তো এখন আসি যেটা, সেটা হচ্ছে কি যে টু ম্যান্ডেটরি ক্রাইটেরিয়া ফর ইউ টু অ্যাপিয়ার অ্যাট দ্য এক্সাম অর সিট করতে, দুটো বিষয়ে আপনি পরীক্ষা উপযুক্ত হবেন। একটা হলো আপনার ফার্স্ট যেটা, এই যে ক্লাস করতেছেন, ক্লাস অ্যাটেন্ডেন্স এলিজিবিলিটি অ্যান্ড অলসো অ্যাচিভ দ্য সার্টিফিকেটস। তার মানে এটা বলতে চাইলাম, ইয়ে করে রাখি যে হ্যাঁ, তাহলে এখন যেটা হলো কি যে ক্লাস আপনাকে আসতে হবে, যেটা আপনারা আসছেন পরীক্ষা আনটিল ফার্দার finish of your classes and you will have to receive of your class eligibility. তার মানে বোঝা গেল যে আপনাকে রীতিমতো ক্লাসে আসতে হবে এবং 75 অ্যাটেন্ডেন্স আপনাকে রাখতে হয় যে and any matters arisen, especially অসুখ বিসুখ, ম্যাটারনিটি, অনেকে থাকেন বিবাহের অবস্থা থাকে, অনেকে অসুস্থ থাকে, আর্জেন্সি কিছু কিছু আছে, বিশেষ করে আপনার চলে যাওয়া, বিভিন্ন ইস্যু, হয়তো কোথাও একটু দীর্ঘ সময় গেল, অনেকে আত্মীয় স্বজন চলে যায়, বিশেষ করে রেসপেক্টেড হিন্দু কমিউনিটি এন্ড আদার্স, সেখানে একটা বাধ্যবোধ, এগুলো আমরা 60-তে ছেড়ে দেব এবং আরো যতদূর পারি হিউম্যানিটিক্যাল গ্রাউন্ডে স্পেশাল কেস হিসেবে ছেড়ে দেব, পরীক্ষা দেন। আপনারা এই যে আসতেছেন, এটা সফটওয়্যার, এখানে কে কখন as and when you are coming and it is fixed on and recorded in your computer website. কাজে আমাদের জুয়েল কখন আসতেছে, নয়ন কখন আসতেছে, বাবু সুমন, মাহিন, আমাদের আবু বকর সিদ্দিক, গুড নেম, এই ভাইয়েরা কখন আসতেছেন, তো এই কখন যাচ্ছেন, এগুলো রেকর্ড হয়ে থাকতেছে এবং এটা শুধু ডাটা অ্যানালাইসিসের ব্যাপার। মিস্টার এক্স, যেমন আমাদের জেনোভি, রোজারিও কখন আসতেছে, শাহিদ, তারপরে আমাদের উজ্জ্বল হোসেন কখন, এইভাবে চলে আসবে। এটারে বলে অ্যাসেন্ডিং ডিসেন্ডিং, হাইস্ট টু লোয়েস্ট, এভাবে উচ্চমান কার অ্যাটেন্ডেন্স কত দিচ্ছে। এটার হওয়ার পরে আইটি একটা এটা চেক করে, ডাটা অ্যানালাইসিস করে আমার ডিপার্টমেন্টাল ক্লাস ম্যানেজমেন্ট দিয়ে এটা প্রসেস হয় এবং অ্যাপ্রুভাল নিয়ে নিই এবং সিগনেটরি আমি, যেহেতু ডিভিশনের হেডের চার্জে এখানে হেড হিসেবে কাজ করছি, সার্টিফিকেট ইস্যু করে দিই। তাহলে যেটা বোঝা গেল যে একটা ক্লাস সার্টিফিকেট দরকার, ক্লাস এলিজিবিলিটি দরকার। এডুকেশনে কোনো রিজনেবল ইয়ে হয় না আমাদের, আমরা রিজনেবল সকলকে হেল্প করে থাকি। এক সেকেন্ড হচ্ছে বাই সাইনিং ইউর কনসার্ন প্রিন্সিপাল, যারা ফার্মে আছেন, প্যাস নয়, ব্যাসদের আমারটাই এনাফ, আর কিছু লাগবে রিকমেন্ডেশন দিলে। আর ব্যাস মানে প্রি আর্টিকেল শিপ স্টুডেন্ট যারা those who are now still আন্ডার গ্রাজুয়েশন প্রোগ্রাম, নতুন আমাদের যে ইনভেনশন যারা প্রেসে আছেন ওনারা না, ফার্মে যারা আছেন, হ্যাঁ, বাই সাইনিং ইউর রেসপেক্টেড প্রিন্সিপালস, আমাদের রেসপেক্টেড মেম্বার্স যারা আছেন ওনারা সাইন করেন, এবং এটা একটা সার্টিফিকেট মতো, এটার ফিটনেস 3 বছর হয়ে গেলে তাকে বলে সিসি, দ্যাট ইজ দ্য গোল্ডেন সার্টিফিকেট ফর অল অফ ইউ। সেটা আপনাদের অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ এবং ভেরি এসেনশিয়াল টু অ্যাবজর্ব এনি প্রফেশন অর জব। মাস্টার ডিগ্রি হয়ে গেলে আর সিসিটা হবে। ইউ ক্যান বেয়ার দ্য এক্সপেন্সেস অফ 6 men, মাই ডিয়ার। দ্রব্যমূল্যের যতই উদ্যোগতি হোক, যাই হোক, যে কোনো চাকরির যতই ইয়ে হোক, আপনি 6 জনকে ভরণ পোষণ করতে পারবেন। মাস্টার ডিগ্রিটা একটু যেটা মার্জিনাল একটা রেজাল্ট অলসো অবটেইনড বাই অল অফ ইউ। এই জন্য মাস্টার ডিগ্রিটা করে নিন যারা গ্রাজুয়েশনে আছেন, আর যারা পেসে আছেন আস্তে ধীরে আপনি সিএট আগে করে ফেলেন, তারপরে মাস্টার ডিগ্রি। তাহলে কি হবে, এই দুর্মূল্যের বাজারে, এবং আমি নেগেটিভ মানুষ না, এই জন্য ওইভাবে না বলি যে চাকরি বাকরির যে একটা আধিক্য কম্পিটিটিভ সিচুয়েশনে, তাহলে আপনারা কি হবে, ইউ উইল গেট as feedback of your job or profession, আপনাকে ডেকে নিবে, বেছে নিবে, চেয়ে নিবে। ফার্ম বলবে থাকো, তোমাকে আমি 50 থেকে 60,000 দিব, অন্যরা বলবে 80 থেকে 1 লাখ টাকার ভিতরে আপনি স্যালারি দেবে। তো যার যা সুবিধা, ফার্মে থাকলে আরো 20,000 টাকা হয়ে যাবে। তার মানে 60 থেকে 80-র ভিতরে মিনিমাম, আর ম্যাক্সিমাম 80 প্লাস 1 লাখ এই রেঞ্জে থাকে। তো এটা যে কোনো চাকরি আপনি গভর্নমেন্ট করেন, অটোনোমাস বডি করেন, ফিনান্সিয়াল ইয়েতে করেন, ব্যাংকিং সেক্টরে করতেছেন, that those the organization who are also dealt their salary or the compensation merge with the scale 35 থেকে 36,000-এর এখন পর্যন্ত ইয়ে নাই প্রথম শ্রেণীর, সে ক্যাডার হোক নন ক্যাডার হোক, প্রথম শ্রেণীর এবং কর্পোরেট। তো কাজেই ইউ আর অ্যাকচুয়ালি জয়নিং ভেরি গুড প্রফেশন, আমি যেটা মনে করি, পার্সোনাল ওপিনিয়ন। আর হচ্ছে যে একটু কষ্ট করে নিই, আর যতদূর পারা যায়, একটা লেভেল পাস হলে তো আর আপনার জন্য এই সিসি যারা আছেন একটা লেভেল সিসি পাস করবেন, ফার্মেই থাকুন, বড় অর্গানাইজেশন, কোথাও এভিপি, কোথাও সিনিয়র ম্যানেজমেন্ট ট্রেনিং, এসপিও তে চলে যাবেন, ব্যাংকিং সেক্টর, ফিনান্স সেক্টর, সিনিয়র প্রিন্সিপাল অফিসার, হয়তো 1-1.5 বছরের ভিতরে এভিপি হয়ে যাবেন। আর সিএ হয়ে গেলে তো ডাইরেক্ট হয়তো অ্যাসিস্ট্যান্ট ভাইস প্রেসিডেন্ট তো হবে না, আগে থেকে লেগে থাকলে হয়তো সিনিয়র অ্যাসিস্ট্যান্ট ভাইস প্রেসিডেন্ট বা ভিপিতে নিয়ে নেয়। ছেড়ে দিলাম, তাহলে কি হলো, মাই অবজেক্টিভ শেয়ার মেজর টুয়াইস ইস্যু or 2 issues. একটা কি, যে সার্টিফিকেট অর্থাৎ ক্লাস যোগদান অত্যন্ত সিগনিফিকেন্ট ফর ইউ, এসেনশিয়াল ফর ইউ টু সিট ফর দ্য এক্সাম। আর একটা হচ্ছে ফার্মে যারা রেসপেক্টেড প্রিন্সিপাল আছেন, ওনাদের আন্ডার গুড গাইডেন্স থাকবে। তারপরে আপনার কি বলে, যে যা বলে শুনবেন, শুনে আপনি ইয়ে করবেন, গুড রিলেশনশিপ রাখবেন। আমাদের ইয়ে আসলে আমাকে জানায়, 7:30টায় আমি বলছি অলরেডি স্যারকে, হয়তো 25-এর দিকে আসবেন। আমাদের সিও স্যার আসলে আমাকে জানাবেন, আমি বারবার দেখতেছি, ওই জন্য তখন আমি ক্লোজে যাব। তাহলে এখন কি হলো, যে দুইটা ইস্যুস বোঝা গেল, যে হোয়াট দ্য প্রসিডিউরস টু সিট ফর দ্য এক্সাম। তাহলে এখানে ছাত্র কারা, মেজর 3টা পোর্শন এখানে আছে। একটা হচ্ছে completed master's degree and also absorb। এখন অনলাইন বেসড এক্সাম হয়ে চাকরি করেও অনেকে এখানে এজ বার নাই, এই জন্য ডাইরেক্ট সিসি থেকে একটু ফ্লেক্সিবিলিটি হয়ে ওনারা একটা শ্রেণী আছে মাস্টার্স পাস এবং বিভিন্ন প্রফেশনে আছেন, ইয়ে করে একটা ফার্ম থেকে ইয়ে করেন, এই একটা শ্রেণী। সেকেন্ড হলো ডাইরেক্ট, দে আর দ্য অ্যাকচুয়ালি রিজনেবল ফর আস, যে গ্রাজুয়েশন করেছেন অথবা মাস্টার্সে আছেন ফার্মের সাথে 3 বছরের আর্টিকেলশিপ, ম্যানার্সে অ্যাটাচড আছেন। আর আরেকটা হচ্ছে আন্ডার গ্রাজুয়েট, তার মানে ইন্টারমিডিয়েট পাস করে গ্রাজুয়েশনে আছে। এবং আমাদের গত 2021 সাল থেকে ইউ আর অ্যাকচুয়ালি ইনভেনশন অফ নিউ ক্রাইটেরিয়া অ্যান্ড টেকিং পার্ট ইন সি এডুকেশন। সুবর্ণ সুযোগটা হচ্ছে লেখাপড়া হবে। তো এই দুটো শ্রেণী, দ্যাট মিনস রিমেইন প্যাস, আমি যে বললাম এই ক্রাইটেরিয়া অনুসারে পরীক্ষা আপনারা বসবেন। এক্সাম পসিবিলিটি নভেম্বরের আপনার 15 to 20, 15 থেকে বেশি, নভেম্বরের 15 থেকে 20 এক্সাম থার্ড টার্ম শুরু হবে। সো ইউ মে হ্যাভ a receipt of your proper learning to appear at the exam and cutting their success too. যে ওখানে আপনাকে ভালো করার জন্য আসতে হবে, সময় চলে যায়, এই জন্য যেটাই শিখেন মন দিয়ে শিখবেন, ক্লাসে গুরুত্ব বেশি দিবেন।
স্যার
আমাদের
আমার একটা প্রশ্ন ছিল স্যার,
আমি
যদি
সেরে
অনুমতি
নেই,
দেন।
নয়ন আগে নিয়ে নেন, পরে পাবেন না, আগে নিয়ে নেন। আমি হয়তো 2-1 মিনিট সময় দেবো। আর আমি বলছি যে 15 দিন 20 দিন পরে হয়তো আমি আসবো, এসে আপনাদের সবার প্রশ্ন নেব। আগে নিয়ে নেন, আমার যেটা মাথায় আসতেছে আপনারা নিয়ে নেন, হেল্প হবে ফর গ্রেটার ইন্টারেস্ট অল অফ ইউ। এরপরে আসি তাহলে এক্সাম গেল, আসি অনলাইন এক্সাম। এটা এখানে অনলাইন যে ক্রাইটেরিয়া কোশ্চিন কেমন হবে না হবে, অলরেডি মডেল অ্যান্সার্স গুলো পাঠানো আছে, দেখেন ওয়েবসাইটে কিছু, আমাদের ওয়েবসাইটেও কিছু সফটওয়্যার দেওয়া আছে, দেখেন। আর ক্লাসে যেগুলো টিচাররা পড়ায়, অ্যাকচুয়ালি এক্সাম উইল বি টেকেন কম্পিউটার বেসড অনলাইন সিটিং এক্সাম আমাদের সিএ ভবনে, যেটা ইউজুয়াল হয় বড় ভাই যারা ওনাদের কাছ থেকে জেনে নিয়ে ফর ব্রড আই থিঙ্ক এরিয়াস অফ ইউর ইনফরমেশন অর আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং। এই গেল। তাহলে এখন কি হলো যে পড়াটা আপনার এ টু জেড, লাইন টু লাইন, ফ্রম স্টার্টিং এ আপ টু জেড হবে, আপনার জানতে হবে। তো এক্সামটা আপনার জিস্ট বেসিকেই অনলাইন সিস্টেম না হবে, কোথাও শর্ট কোশ্চেন হবে, কোথাও ট্রু ফুলস হবে, কোথাও ম্যাচিং হবে। অলরেডি ব্যাপার দ্য এক্সাম, ওখানে 2-3টা জিনিস বেশি ফিল ইন দ্য গ্যাপস থাকতে পারে, নোটা বেনি বলে ওটায় আপনার 15 টাইপের একটা সেন্টেন্স লেখা যেতে পারে, হতে পারে। আরেকটা হচ্ছে যে শর্ট ইকুয়েশন, 1 লাইন 2 লাইনের কোন আনসার। সো ইউ শুড হ্যাভ টু অলসো লার্ন অফ পিওর and corrected English, 1 or 2 lines of making sentence of short, I think 2 or 3 lines paragraph. একটা গ্রামার ভুল করা যাবে না, একটা কোনো তথ্য গরমিল করা যাবে না, একটা দুইটা যে সাবজেক্ট ওয়াইজ সিনারিও বেসড কোশ্চেন গুলো দিয়ে থাকবে, বিশেষ করে ট্যাক্সেশন, বিশেষ করে ম্যাথমেটিক্যাল অ্যানালিটিক্যাল টার্মস, লস, এগুলো একটু ভালো করে দেখে রাখতে হবে। তাহলে আমি কি করলাম, I have covered actually the systems and procedure. Yeah. হ্যাঁ, তাহলে সিস্টেমস অ্যান্ড প্রসিডিউরস আপনার এক্সামিনেশন গেল। এরপরে আসলাম পরীক্ষা কেমন হবে, কি হবে, মিনস অ্যান্ড ওয়েজ, দ্যাট মিনস দ্য ফরমেশন এন্ড দ্য টেকনিক অফ এক্সাম অ্যান্ড সেটিং কোশ্চেন্স অ্যান্ড আদার্স। থার্ড যেটা হলো যে গুরুত্ব একটু ইংরেজিতে দিতে হবে, ইংলিশ কোশ্চেন সেজন্য বুঝতে হবে, তো না পড়লে এই জন্য আপনি এখানেও পড়েন, ইংলিশ ভার্সনের কিছু লেখা টেখা পড়েন, যেমন পেপারটা পড়েন, রেফারেন্স কোনো বুক পড়েন, স্পেশালি সিলেবাস ম্যানুয়ালের ভিতর দিয়ে যাবেন, টিচার যে সিনোপসিস দেয় এগুলো খুব ভালো করে আয়ত্তে রাখবেন। Which questions will be asked in the exam? Maximums are known to you, all of you, but not similar. You should have to create of your realizations and to put the correct answer there, my dear. কবিতাই হয়ে গেল। অর্থাৎ আপনি সবকিছুই কমন পাবেন না, কিন্তু আপনি সিলেবাস অনুযায়ী, সিলেবাস রিলেটেড, এক্সাম ওরিয়েন্টেড, ম্যানুয়াল বেসড, এগুলো যদি আপনি করে থাকেন, টিচারকে ফলো করেন এবং আমাদের ক্লাসগুলো করে থাকেন, তাহলে ইউ উইল বি ইনশাআল্লাহ I think eligible and very স্যারকে একবার পাঠিয়ে দিই, স্যার মনে হয় পায় না। একটু তাহলে আপনার ইয়েটা হয়ে গেল। আবার আমি একটু ফরওয়ার্ড করলাম, 7:30 বেজে গেছে। তো এখন যেটা হলো যে মাই ডিয়ার ইউ অল, যে আমরা এইভাবে ক্লাসগুলো করব। আর আরেকটা আসি টিচারকে আপনারা প্রশ্ন মানে মুখর করবেন। এটা কেমন প্রশ্ন, রিলেটেড প্রশ্ন, আমি বুঝি নাই, ইউ আর ফুললি ওপেন ইন্ডিপেন্ডেন্ট। আমাদের টিচাররা ট্রেন্ড, আমাদের বিভিন্ন বোর্ডের মিটিং হয়, আমাদের বিভিন্ন ধরনের ওনাদের অ্যাডভাইস ইনস্ট্রাকশন শেয়ার করা হয়। কাজেই আমরা টাইম টু টাইম আমার যারা আছে অন্যান্য ডিপার্টমেন্ট, 5টা ডিপার্টমেন্ট, তো ওনারা আসবে আমার আন্ডারে এডুকেশন। আপনি যতক্ষণ সিএ না হচ্ছেন ততক্ষণ ইভেন মেম্বার হয়েও আমাদের ডিপার্টমেন্টে আপনাকে থাকতে হবে। টিচার গুলো আমাদেরই প্রোডাকশন। তো কাজে যেটা বলতে চাচ্ছি যে ইউ আর অ্যাকচুয়ালি লাকি দ্যাট ইউ আর গেটিং অল দ্য necessary services from our education and students affairs division. এই জন্য এটাকে বলতেছি এডুকেশন ইনস্টিটিউটের বাবদ এডুকেশন, আর আরেকটা হচ্ছে স্টুডেন্টস অ্যাফেয়ার্স। তো জি, আবার আসি তাহলে, এই গেল। আর ক্লাস রেগুলার থেকেন, এরকম 90 মিনিটসের 75 থেকেন, তাছাড়া আপনার এইগুলো সব লাল হয়ে থাকবে। আপনি ফুল টাইম ম্যাচিউরড নন, অর্থাৎ 75 মিনিটস থাকেন নাই, আগে পরে 75 মিনিটস এবং 75 অ্যাটেন্ডেন্স সাবজেক্ট ওয়াইজ যে যে সাবজেক্ট করেছেন এটা। আরেকটা হচ্ছে যে অনেক সময় মেল আমাদের সুবিধার জন্য একসাথে পাঠাচ্ছি, আপনি ইনরোল না, ওটা পরীক্ষা দিবেন না, ক্লাসেও না, আপনি অটোমেটিক্যালি ওখানে থাকবেন না। যেমন এখানে অ্যামাং আই থিঙ্ক 120 তে 65 জন যারা ট্যাক্স নাই, এরকম যদি 2-4 জন থাকেন, এমনিতে আপনি উইল বি অলসো, এটা বলে যে আউট ফ্রম দা রেকর্ড লিস্ট। কাজেই আপনার একজন থাকলেও এটাই নয় যে এনরোল না করে হবে না, রেজিস্ট্রেশনই নাই। আপনারা যারা রেজিস্ট্রেশন করেছেন, ইউ অলরেডি sent with your information that you are regular students attending and to sit for the exam. Very soon exam section দেওয়া হয়ে গেছে, আমাদের অ্যাকাউন্টসে দেওয়া আছে। যারা বই তুলেন নাই, বই অ্যাভেলেবল, আপনি বানানি রিসিপ্ট নিয়ে অথবা ক্যাপ্টেনের সাথে যোগাযোগ করে, ক্যাপ্টেন ইজ হেয়ার আওয়ার অথরাইজ, আমি আমার ইয়েতে ক্লাস ম্যানেজমেন্ট বা ওনার যেটাই হোক, ক্যাপ্টেনরা আপনাদের ফুললি আমার ইনস্টিটিউটে অথরাইজড আমরা করে দিয়েছি। তো কাজে গাইডলাইনে দেখবেন, অনলাইন গাইডলাইনে সেখানে ইয়ে করা আছে, আমার চিঠি ইস্যু করা আছে। এই জন্য আপনার ক্যাপ্টেনের সাথে শেয়ার করবেন। কোনো অসুবিধা হলে যদি স্কোপ মনে করেন ডাইরেক্ট মেল দিবেন, আমরা রেসপন্স করব। তো আপাতত এই, তাহলে আজকের সেশন যেটা, সেটা হলো কি, দিস ইজ ওভারঅল ডিসকাশন, থ্রেডবার ডিসকাশন, পুঙ্খানুপুঙ্খ রেগুলার টিচারের সাথে আজকের যে সেশন, এটার মিল নাই। আগে বলা হতো অডিট বা অ্যাসুরেন্স, অ্যাকাউন্টিং অথবা অডিটিং, এগুলো আমাদের ইয়ের কি বলে যে সে প্রফেশনের বেসিক অথবা জিস্ট অথবা মেন বিষয়। কিন্তু এর সাথে যুগের সাথে তাল মিলে একটু অন্যরকম হয়ে গেছে। সেটা কি, বিশেষ করে এখন ট্যাক্সেশন এবং আইটি, এগুলো এসেনশিয়াল হয়ে গেছে। ট্যাক্সেশনটা কি, যেমন আপনার এই এক্সপেন্সেস, বিশেষ করে আপনাদের ইকোনমিক্যাল ফাংশন গুলো এবং আপনাদের আয় ব্যয় দিয়ে এবং রিলেটেড লস, আপনার এতে ট্যাক্সেশনের গুরুত্ব বেড়ে গেছে। এই জন্য অডিট অ্যাসুরেন্স যেমন গুরুত্ব অ্যাকাউন্টিং এর আছে, যেমন ট্যাক্সেশন পার্ট অ্যান্ড পার্সেল and also makes the very related norms for the chartered accountants. তো এই সব আনমিউট করে রাখেন। তো এই জন্য যেটা বলতেছি যে ট্যাক্স বিষয়টা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ এবং এখানে ছাত্রের আধিক্য বেশি। আবার এতে কি ইটস অলসো দ্য সোর্স অফ ইউর রানিং ইনকাম। অনেকে ইয়ে করে আমাদের যে কি বলে এটাকে ট্যাক্স আইটি ইনকাম ট্যাক্স প্র্যাকটিশনার হয়েও তারা বিভিন্ন দিকে আয় উপার্জনে ব্যস্ত থাকে। ভালো, দিস ইজ পজিটিভ সাইন ফর। তো যেটা বলতে চাচ্ছি যে এই জন্য ট্যাক্সটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। আর আজকে আমাদের উচিত যেটা সেটা হলো টু অলসো মেক the sessions with conversations, the systems for the media of instructions with English or in English. এই জন্য ইংরেজিতে একটু গুরুত্ব দেই। আমাদের সদ্য সিও স্যার, উনি তো সিনিয়র সচিব ছিলেন, গভর্নমেন্টের সর্বোচ্চ পর্যায়ের একজন রাষ্ট্রীয় কর্মকর্তা ছিলেন। তো যেটা বলার যে হয়তো ইংরেজি একটু ইউজ করবেন, যেটা উচিত আমাদের। এই জন্য ইউ উইল মেক ইয়েস নো ওকে স্যার প্লিজ, I would be grateful if repeat again না বুঝলে এভাবে, এবং ইংরেজিতে একটু কনভার্সনটা নিয়ে সাথে আপনারা একটু এটাকে ইনক্রিজ করে ফেলেন। বিশেষ করে এই সেশনটা ইট উইল বি ভেরি হেল্পফুল ফর ইউ টু ইনফ্লুয়েন্স অর মেকিং ফ্লুয়েন্ট অফ ইউর লার্নিং ইংলিশ অ্যান্ড টু আই থিঙ্ক এক্সপ্রেস প্রেজেন্ট। এই জন্য আপনার বলার ক্ষেত্রে, উপস্থাপনের ক্ষেত্রে বেশি হেল্পফুল হবে। তো এই পর্যন্তই মনে হয়।
স্যার আপনি মিউট হয়ে গেছেন।
স্যার আপনার কথা শোনা যায় না।
স্যারের কথা শোনা যায় স্পষ্ট হয় না, দেওয়ালে বাড়ি খায় কথাগুলো কেমন জানি হয়, বোঝা যায় না ঠিক।
উনি মিউট হয়ে গেছেন।
আমি তো আনমিউট হয়ে গেছি, সরি।
একটা কোশ্চেন ছিল।
হ্যাঁ, ইয়ে আব্দুল্লাহ আল মামুন কিছু বললে বলেন, যে একটা এনি queries or just for information to get feedback from me, কিছু বলার থাকলে বলেন। আমার মনে হয় যে আমাদের পরম শ্রদ্ধেয় আমাদের প্রধান নির্বাহী স্যার হয়তো কিছুক্ষণের ভিতরে যোগ দেবেন। তো আমি একটু ইয়ে বলে এটা সাম এন্ড শর্ট অর রিভিউ অফ মাই ডিসকাশন একটু চলে যায়। আজকে কি কি বিষয় আমি কথা বললাম, এটা বিশেষ করে দিস পার্ট সেশন, তো প্লিজ গেট লার্ন। আজকে আমি যেটা কয়েকটা বিষয় বললাম, একটা হলো প্রসেস অ্যান্ড প্রসিডিংস টু সিট ফর দ্য এক্সাম, অর্থাৎ আপনি এখানে কিভাবে পরীক্ষার জন্য উপযুক্ত হবেন এবং কিভাবে পরীক্ষা দিবেন, এই বিষয়টা কিন্তু আজকে বললাম প্রয়োজন হয়। এই জন্য যারা পরে এসেছেন, those the students who came later, please also get understood by your captains or share with others the present students earlier. আগে যারা এসেছেন ওনাদের সাথে কথা বলে নিন, শেয়ার করে নিন, অথবা রেকর্ডিংস ফলো করেন। সেকেন্ড হলো যে আপনার ক্লাসের যেটা সিগনিফিকেন্স, গুরুত্বটা, অর্থাৎ কিভাবে আপনাকে ক্লাসে আসতে হবে, কত পার্সেন্ট আপনাকে 75 অ্যাটেন্ডেন্স রাখতে হবে, প্রত্যেকটা বিষয় শুনতে হবে, এবং আপনার the methods of learning, especially CA profession, and to put in the exam to get succeed, অর্থাৎ আপনি কিভাবে লেখাপড়া করে এই বিষয়ে আপনি হতে পারেন। আর আরেকটা হচ্ছে যে the current scenario of your this education and also your job situation, যে এই দুর্মূল্যের বাজারে এবং অস্থিরতার ভিতরেও আপনার এই প্রফেশনটার গুরুত্ব কত আপনার, এটা আপনাদেরকে জানান দেওয়া, কিছুটা টাচ করা হলো। আর সর্বোপরি ফাইনালি যেটা বলতে চাইলাম যে প্রত্যেক ক্লাসে আপনি কি অবস্থিত থাকবেন, যে সকল এনরোল করেছেন তাতে থাকবেন। আর ক্লাসটা আপনি কি যাতে এক সিটে, ইফ ইউ সিট ওয়ান্স অ্যান্ড ইউ ক্যান সাকসেস in the exam, you will take such procedure, এইভাবে আপনি আগাবেন। আর ফাইনালি যেটা বললাম যে স্পেশাল সেশন যেগুলো, অর্থাৎ that those the classes will be contributed by our guest faculty, such like today's our topmost honorable and also the highest respected our sir Babu Subhashish Bose, senior ex-secretary of the government, BCS cadre. তো এই জন্য এইরকম বড় বড় মাপের মানুষ আপনাদের ওই সার্টিফিকেট লেভেল বা নলেজ লেভেল আনবো আমরা, বিশেষ করে এক্সাম না হওয়া পর্যন্ত এগুলো চলবে। তাহলে এই ক্লাসটার লঞ্চটা কি এরকম ফুললি সেপারেট অ্যান্ড ডিটাচ ফ্রম রেগুলার সেশন। রেগুলার সেশন যেগুলো স্যারেরা আছেন দুইজন, একজন ডাইরেক্ট ট্যাক্স ভ্যাট পোর্শন পড়াচ্ছেন, সরি ডাইরেক্ট ট্যাক্স অর্থাৎ ইনকাম ট্যাক্স পড়াচ্ছেন, আর ইনডাইরেক্ট ট্যাক্স যেগুলো ভ্যাট পোর্শন যারা পড়াচ্ছেন ওনাদের রয়েছে পড়ার নো ইস্যুস ফর আস। আজকের সেশন এটা আপনাকে থ্রেড বা ডিসকাশন পুঙ্খানুপুঙ্খ রূপে দেওয়া হবে, কোথায় আপনার গ্যাপ আছে না from A to Z, and will make all of you such of better understanding, good understanding, and to success in the exam. এছাড়াও ব্যক্তিগত পার্সোনাল লাইফে আপনি ট্যাক্স যেগুলো অ্যাসেসমেন্ট করা আপনার ইলিজিবল যেগুলো এরিয়া আছে এগুলো আপনি করতে পারেন। তাহলে বোঝা গেল this session is very helpful for your from A to Z learning, also doing well in the exam, and finally to survive in your life present proceedings. তাহলে এই আপনার ট্যাক্সের আর যে সেশনটা এইভাবেই আপনি আমরা শুক্র শনিবারেই রাখবো, স্যার ব্যস্ত থাকেন। অনলি কিপিং রিকোয়েস্ট অ্যান্ড দিস ইজ গ্রেট টাস্ক অর কন্ট্রিবিউশন, অত্যন্ত ব্যস্ত থাকেন আমাদের, আমরাও ব্যস্ত থাকি, তবুও এর মাঝেও স্যার এই কন্ট্রিবিউশন নেট টপ মোস্ট এডুকেটেড অ্যান্ড প্রফেশনাল বলতে পারি আমরা। কিছু আমাদের প্রফেশনাল লেভেলের ছাত্ররা উপকৃত হচ্ছেন, সার্টিফিকেট লেভেলেও হচ্ছেন। এখানে আপনারা বেশি পাবেন না, কারণ 4টা সেকশন তো স্যারকে আমরা সাইক্লিক সিস্টেমে রিকোয়েস্ট করবো, এই জন্য যখনই আমরা শুক্র শনিবারে একদিন দিয়ে দেবো, 4টা সেকশন হওয়াতে প্রতি শুক্র শনিবারেও আপনি পাবেন না। আর ওয়ার্কিং ডেতে আন্ডার ফিজিবিলিটি স্যারকে হয়তো ইয়ে করবো। এই জন্য ধরেন স্যার যদি এখানে 4 দিন আসে, তাহলে আরো 3টা সেকশনে 4টা সেকশন 4 দিন করে নেই। তো এই জন্য আপনারা যেটা পাবেন মন দিয়ে শিখে নিন। সিনপসিসটা আগেই দিয়ে দিলাম, 4 দিন আর দিয়ে মনে 4 দিন, 4 দিন ফল, এটা একটু দেখে নেবেন, সামনে রাখবেন, ওটা থেকে গ্রন্থ করা হবে। আর যখন স্যার বলবেন আপনার রেসপন্স, প্লিজ আই অলসো রিকোয়েস্ট, ইউ আর ভেরি গুড, দেখি আমি রেসপন্স করেন। এই সেশনটা আপনি রেসপন্স করবেন, ইয়েস স্যার, ওকে স্যার, প্লিজ ক্যারি অন, অথবা প্লিজ অলসো এক্সপ্লেন এগেইন স্যার, এইভাবে। অথবা কোনো কিছু আপনাকে জানতে চাইলেন, ছোট ছোট সংজ্ঞা আপনি বলে দিন
স্যার।
শেষ করে দিই জোর। যখন আপনি
ওকে স্যার,
ইউ আর আনএবল টু মেক দ্য সেন্টেন্স স্পিক ইংলিশ, আপনি যদি আমি ইংলিশে পারতেছি না, চেষ্টা করতে হবে 24 ঘন্টায় এক পর্যায়ে হয়ে যাবে। পারবেন বাংলায় বলেন, স্যার উইল অলসো মেক অফ ইউর গুড আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং ইন ইংলিশ, এবং অত্যন্ত সাবলীল সিম্পল ইংলিশ, সুন্দর ইংলিশ। আমরা যে বলি আমাদেরগুলো একটু কমপ্লেক্স হয়ে যায়, জটিল হয়ে যায়, যে ইট উইল বি নো প্রবলেম অল অফ ইউ। আমি যে কথাগুলো বললাম এর চেয়ে বেশি পাবেন আপনারা, যে আমি অতিশয়োক্তি এক্সেসিং কিছু বলিনি। প্লিজ ক্যারি অন। জুয়েল প্লিজ মাই ডিয়ার, বলি স্যার আসছেন কিনা আমি একটু দেখে।
ইয়েস স্যার। স্যার উই নিড অ্যান ইনফরমেশন ফ্রম ইউ স্যার।
আসছে স্যার, আসছে জি
স্যার। লাস্ট 2 উইকস ফ্রাইডে মেবি আমাদের 3টা or 4টা ক্লাস মিস হয়েছে।
ওকে ওকে ওকে, বুঝে গেছি, আর বলার দরকার নাই। Actually, this is your professional education, my dear. So, as cyclic systems, the class will be rounded or covered. If any teacher may also preoccupations or uncertain absorb in any unforced situations and not conducting the classes. And that situations we also hire, request others to cover, make up the session, and the absent teacher will again come the gap situation and will cover, no problem, my dear. And you are lucky.
Okay,
You are
okay, sir.
lucky.
Thank you.
No, okay, you are lucky that actually you are getting accessing, I think, there are 22 pages on or before appearing the exam. আপনারা এই গত সেশনটা হলো টাইট ফিটিং। আমি একটি সেশন করি তো এগুলো আমরা কাজ করি, আমাদের একটা মোটামুটি ধারণা চলে আসে। আপনারা পূর্ণ ক্লাস করেও 22 থেকে 27 দিন আপনারা সময় পাবেন। কাজে আই থিঙ্ক ইটস নো ইস্যু। কি ক্লাস হচ্ছে না হচ্ছে এটা ম্যাক্সিমামই দেখবেন আপনার 90% ক্লাসই অ্যাজ পার শিডিউল হচ্ছে, যেটা মাস্টার শিডিউল দেওয়া, আবার সাপ্তাহিক শিডিউল দিচ্ছি আমরা। তাহলে কি হলো, সাপ্তাহিক শিডিউল কেন দেই? যে উইকলি শিডিউল অলসো মেক ইনশিওর দ্যাট I think ongoing of your continuing class, চলমান যে ক্লাসগুলো থাকে এইগুলো যেন চালু থাকে, এই জন্য সাপ্তাহিক। তাড়াতাড়ি মাস্টার শিডিউল ওই যে দিয়ে দিলাম 3 মাসের, ওটাই তো চলছে। এতে হচ্ছে কি আমাদের কোনো ক্লাস ল্যাপস যায় না, একটা ক্লাসও ল্যাপস হবে। If they are being any teacher in trouble or preoccupations, we will request and hire other teachers to complete your session, my dear. And this is the era of, I think, digitalization. And so you are getting very soon, and I think within the possible time, and to attend the session. এই তো এত ইয়ে নাই। তো থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ। সেশন শুরু হয়ে গেছে, তো একটু আরেকটু কয়েকদিন চলুক, পরে সব ঠিক হয়ে যাবে। And you
Okay,
have
sir.
fully I think your I think responsibility or your askings manners or matters to us, no problem. তো এই কোনো অসুবিধা হলে মেল করা যাবে, আবার কথাও বলা যাবে, কোনো অসুবিধা নেই। এই যে নাম্বারগুলো যেগুলো দেওয়া আছে 5টা ডিপার্টমেন্টের এইভাবে আমিও আছি। তো থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ। আর স্যার, আদাব স্যার। অলরেডি আওয়ার গেস্ট ফ্যাকাল্টি, আওয়ার স্টাফ বসেস, স্যার আমাদের অভিভাবক সামনেই চলে আসছে। তো আমরা কভার করি, আর ক্যাপ্টেন জুয়েল সহ অন্যদেরকে বলি আগে যেগুলো বলে রাখলাম ওইভাবে সেশনটা শুরু করি। এশার নামাজ,
Okay, sir.
এশার নামাজ
Okay, sir.
যেভাবে অ্যাজ ইউজুয়াল হয় স্যারের সাথে কথা বলে উইল টেক টাইম। So expecting, and I believe myself that session will be enjoyable and you will make sure of your response all time. স্যার যেভাবে বলেন এভাবে আগিয়ে নেই, সেভাবে কথা বলি। স্যার, I am your Halim sir, and also request you, please, you may start your valuable sessions and let me permission to leave. আমি বিদায় নেই। Already I have discussed and instructed our students, and they will
Thank you.
sure
Thank you, sir.
make
Thank you
sure
for your kind
their
information.
cooperation
Thanks.
upon you. Thank you, Joel. আর স্যারের সাথে এভাবে আমার সাথে যেভাবে কথা বললাম সেভাবে
Yes,
রেসপন্স।
sir.
স্যার আমি
Sure,
বিদায়
sir.
নিই, আপনি শুরু করেন। আদাব স্যার, আদাব আদাব।
Okay, let us start. Good evening to everybody.
Adab, sir. How are you, sir?
Salam. So this is the first class with you in this
Yes,
certificate
sir.
level. So maybe I will have a number of classes in course of time. So let us start with the first class. I believe you have got your regular teacher who is teaching you income tax, different aspects of income tax. But I'll also be discussing some of the issues of income tax which are basic or which are required to be understood by you. First of all, what is tax? I believe everybody knows it. What is tax, or what is the definition of tax? That is very basic for you, or that is a conceptual issue. Because if you do not know the tax, there are different types of taxes. Maybe you have heard of income tax, you have heard of VAT, value added tax, you have heard of customs duty, you have heard of supplementary duty, you have heard of regulatory duty. So many duties and taxes are there. So you have to differentiate among all the taxes. If I say VAT, you are paying VAT. And if I say you are paying income tax, whether there is a difference between the two or not. Yes, of course, there is a difference between the two. So if somebody asks you the difference between the two, you have to explain it to him or her. So that's why the concept of taxation has to be very clear to you all the time. As a student of chartered accountancy course, and this is a mandatory course for you. You have to complete it. So I would like to start with the definition of tax. So if you know that government is actually collecting taxes, why government is collecting taxes? It's because government needs fund, government needs finance. And tax is one of the most important sources of revenue of the government. So if you look at the budget, you will see that government is realizing taxes in the form of income tax, in the form of VAT, and also in the form of customs duty. These are the main sources of the revenue for the government. What are the other sources of revenue? Non-tax revenue is, of course, another source of revenue for the government, but that is not tax revenue, that is non-tax revenue. Say, for example, postage duty, stamp duty, registration fee, etc., etc. So many fees are there. So those are non-tax revenues for the government, but government needs to collect all those revenues in order to support the revenue expenditure and the development expenditure. So what is the development expenditure? Development expenditure is that the government is spending money on building roads, highways, bridges, culverts, etc. So these are necessary for the well-being of the people of the country. And when revenue expenditure is concerned, it means that the government has to pay salaries, wages, etc. for the government servants, for the corporations, that means autonomous bodies, etc. So government has to pay salaries and wages in order to support the administration of the government bodies, autonomous bodies, public universities. All these are supported by the government. So how to fund them? Government has to fund all those bodies and institutes, departments, etc. with the revenue government is earning. If the government cannot earn revenue, then government has to take a loan from the private sector, from the banks, from the central bank, financial institutions, non-banking financial institutions, or from the foreign government. As well as the international organizations like the ADB, World Bank, IMF, UNCTAD, etc. So all these international organizations have to be approached by the government to fund it. So that is also necessary for the government to take loans from them if needed. But if it is not needed, then government will not approach those institutes for funding. So the government will stress on or put importance on realizing revenue from its own sources. That means from the people, from the taxpayers who are able to pay taxes. So who are the taxpayers? You know it very well. Who are the taxpayers? Persons, individuals. Individuals are taxpayers, of course, who are earning money. Maybe by working with an organization, working with the government, or by doing business, or by conducting profession, operating some other businesses, etc. So these are the persons who are paying taxes to the government. In addition to that, the companies are also paying taxes. Partnership firms are paying taxes. Association of persons are paying taxes. And the local government institutions like municipal corporations, Jala Parishad, district Parishad, etc., etc. They are also paying taxes. Any fund may also be liable to pay taxes. Artificial juridical person are also liable to pay taxes. So all these are required to pay
Yes, sir.
taxes according to the income they are earning. So that's the most important thing, that you are paying taxes if there is an income earned by you. If not, then you are not paying taxes. And the tax, as I have told you before, that it's a compulsory charge. It's not optional, but this is a compulsory charge. That means you must pay taxes to the government. And if I ask you the definition of taxation, the definition of taxation is the act of levying taxes. When I say taxation, it means that the act of levying taxes, it is called taxation. And as I told you that this is a compulsory charge, so it might be imposed on the person or on the company or corporation, whatever it is, or any person, and they are bound to pay taxes. So you cannot avoid paying taxes. And this is actually paid by you according to the ability. That means according to the income you are earning. So that is the important thing. As we have already told, that if you do not have any income, you don't have to pay taxes. Now the persons. If I ask you the person, how will you answer it? A person is an individual. This is the sole thing, that is the individual is the person. You can say like that, or it could be included in some other entities. That means whether a person could be treated as an individual or other entities. That is another question. If you go to the Income Tax Ordinance 1984, as amended up to 30th June 2022, you will see that person has got a definition under section 2, and the definition includes a person means an individual, for an association of person, a company, an artificial juridical person, fund, any other entity like municipal corporation, city corporation, etc., etc. So person includes a number of entities. So you must know that person does not only include individual, but it includes other entities. So when I say person, you have to mean that this includes many other entities mentioned in the Income Tax Ordinance 1984. So the Income Tax Ordinance 1984 is the mandatory book you have to read, because this is the ordinance and everything is mentioned there. That is the correct version of every aspects of income tax law. So if you do not have the income tax ordinance, you must buy it immediately and should have one with you all the time, because it is needed for you to study in order to pass the examination, as well as when you are going to practice as a chartered accountant. So anytime you will need it. And your everyday business, definitely when you are working with a company, you have to consult the income tax law or income tax ordinance. Even if you practice as a chartered accountant, definitely you have to consult the tax law, because this is always changing. And through the Finance Act every year, you will have some changes in the income tax, VAT, and customs duty. So that's why All these have to be known to you so that you can advise properly to the clients you will be having all the time. Or if you are in charge of the accounts department of a particular company or finance department of a particular company, you need to know all the matters of taxation, because you have to advise the company how to proceed with that, whether you want to avoid taxes or you want to pay taxes properly as per rules and regulations or law. So within the law, you can advise the company to save some taxes. That is also possible. But if you do not know the nitty-gritty of the taxation, you cannot advise the company to save a good amount of taxes. So as I told you that tax is a compulsory charge and it is imposed by the government on any individual, company, or other entities. And the persons who are taxed have to pay taxes irrespective of their corresponding return. It means that when you are paying taxes to the government, it does not mean that government will be paying you a certain amount of money or certain benefit in exchange of that. No, your payment of taxes does not attract any benefit from the government. You cannot claim any benefit from the government. This is mandatory on your part. So you can ask me a question that if I do not receive any corresponding benefit by paying taxes to the government, why should I pay taxes? That is a question. And this question can be set in the examination like this, that you are not given any benefit by the government, although you are paying taxes to the government. So why should you pay taxes without any corresponding benefit from the government? That might be a question. So how to answer that question? Any idea from your side?
No, sir.
স্যার আমার একটা কোশ্চেন ছিল স্যার।
Yes.
স্যার আমরা যখন ট্যাক্স ক্যালকুলেট করি, যখন আমাদের লিস্টেড যে কোম্পানিগুলো আছে তাদের তো ট্যাক্সের একটা ইয়ে থাকে, বা তাদের ট্যাক্সের একটা ইয়ে থাকে, সিস্টেম থাকে। আবার কিছু কিছু কোম্পানি আছে যেগুলো আকারে ছোট বাট নন লিস্টেড। তো ওনাদের আমাকে একজন সিনিয়র ভাইয়া বলেছিল যে ওনাদের ট্যাক্সটা এনবিআর ফিক্সড করে দেয়, এবং ওনাদেরটা ওইভাবে রুলস মেনটেন করা হয় না। ওনারা যেইভাবে একটা পার্সেন্টেজ বসিয়ে দেয় ওই অ্যামাউন্টের উপর পেমেন্ট করা লাগে, এবং তাদের ওই ইনকাম স্টেটমেন্ট ওইভাবে দেখা হয় না, ব্যাংক থেকে তারা নিয়ে সেটার উপর একটা বসিয়ে দেয়। স্যার এটা কেন করা হয়, বা এটাতে যত কম বেশিও হইতে পারে, সেক্ষেত্রে কি ওই কোম্পানি কিছু করার নাই, ওইটাই পেড করতে হবে?
What you have said, I would like to say that it is not the system. This is not the system that is being practiced by the taxes department. So whenever listed companies are there, listed companies are to pay taxes at a certain rate, and they have to get their accounts audited. And on the audited accounts, they have to pay taxes. The accounts are submitted, audited accounts are submitted by the listed companies to the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes, and the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes, if satisfied with the audited reports, will accept it. Otherwise, the Deputy Commissioner can call the representative of the company to appear before him in order to explain the sources of income or the books of accounts they have maintained, the correctness of the books of accounts, etc., if needed. And afterwards, tax will be imposed on them, and the rate of taxation is fixed. Fixed means on particular companies, listed companies, the rate of taxes would be 40%, or would be 35%, or would be 25%, or would be 27.5%, whatever it is. It depends on the nature of the company. So let us suppose that the Grameen Phone is a listed company, of course, but their taxation rate is 40%. But when they are issuing shares to the public, in that case, their rate of taxation would be a little bit less. So it depends on the government, because every year the finance bill is passed in the parliament and it becomes a finance act, and the act actually suggests the percentage of taxation. But with regard to other companies, as you say, that there are public companies and also private companies. So their taxation rates are also mentioned in the Finance Act. If you look at the Finance Act of this year, you will see the rate of the taxation for a private limited company. So what you have said is that uh, the tax rate is imposed by the government. Yes, it is imposed by the government, but this rate of taxation, which is suggested through the Finance Act, will prevail over all the companies. Say, for example, if there is a particular rate of taxation for a private limited company, it will apply to every private limited company in Bangladesh of the same nature. So that's the case. And whenever the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes issues a notice to the concerned company, they have to submit their documents, accounts, etc. And they will need audited accounts. And if they submit audited accounts, in that case, the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes will justify his imposition of taxes if the accounts are correct and complete according to the opinion of the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes. He will accept it. But if the books of accounts are not verifiable, in that case, he can apply his discretionary power. Discretionary power means he can just disagree with the sale which has been shown by the company, and the sale could be estimated or reconstructed, etc. So depends on the situation. So what I would like to say, that rate of taxation is suggested through the Finance Act and it cannot be changed. But whenever the books of accounts are submitted, there are sales book, there are purchase books, there are you know bank accounts, because when sale is you know uh, being uh, conducted, in that case, sometimes the transactions are conducted through banks, sometimes the transactions are conducted through cash. So whenever the transactions are conducted through bank, in that case, the bank statement is a must and it should tally with the sales book. So these are various aspects of taxation. And the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes, when makes an assessment, he has to go through a process, and the process is sometimes a little bit cumbersome or difficult. It's not very easy, but sometimes whenever the SSE, that means the company or the individual person, submits the return through self-assessment scheme or universal assessment scheme, in that case, it is accepted by the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes. It is much more easier than the normal assessment process. So I believe that if you look at the Finance Act of this year, you will be able to understand the rate of the taxes which have to be applied to a particular company. So the company can be a private limited company, can be a public limited company, can be a listed company, whatever it is. So in that case, you can choose one and then verify whether they are following the rate that is suggested through the Finance Act. I believe, first of all, you have to look at the Finance Act. In that case, you will be able to understand. If you do not able to understand, if you are not able to understand, you can ask me a question in the next class. There is no problem with regard to that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So my question was, since the tax is mandatory, as I have told you, that tax is a mandatory charge or fee imposed by the government on an individual or company or other entities, and you cannot claim any corresponding benefit from the government after paying taxes. So why should you pay taxes then? What is the necessity of paying taxes, or what is the obligation on your part to pay taxes? That is the question, and you have to answer it.
We should pay taxes because it is the chief source of NBR to maintain the governmental any cost.
Yeah, it is source of the NBR. That is true, as I discussed, that this is one of the main sources or the most important sources of revenue for the government in order to spend money on developmental expenditure or revenue expenditure. But the answer to this question would be, since this is a mandatory charge imposed by the government, an
Right, sir.
individual or any
Right.
other, it has to pay taxes. Number one. Number two is that government is protecting you from foreign aggression. Government is giving you opportunity to do business, because as a national of this country or as a citizen of this country, government is giving this opportunity to you to do business or to work with a company as a professional, or you can adopt any source of income. So that is the opportunity given to you by the state, and it is not given to any other foreign citizen in this country. So as a citizen of this country, you are enjoying the right of your sovereignty, and government is actually protecting you from foreign competition. That means you are working for a company and you are not competing with a foreigner, because foreigner is not coming here in order to compete with you until or if there is no special provision for that. If there is a special provision, that means for a contractual service, for example, a technical person is needed in a company. In that case, a technical person could be recruited from another country, but he is not your competitor. If you are competent enough to provide the service, definitely a foreigner would not be recruited here. So that's why this mandatory charge, that is the taxation, is paid by you to the government, since you are living in a sovereign country and the country is giving you protection from all aspects. So that's why this is necessary for you to pay taxes to the government. Or another point could be added to this: whenever you have studied in the university or in a public college or in a public medical college or public engineering university, you have been given subsidized education. That means government subsidized you. You paid small fees. That means very reasonable fees. And whenever you stayed in the university hall, you are given subsidized food, whatever it is. So in that way, it was a public money. Public money means the money of the people, tax of the people. So that's why you have got some obligation to the government of the country to enable the government to run the administration very smoothly. So that's why you have to pay taxes to the government. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now we move to another uh, subject matter, that is objectives of taxes. What are the objectives of taxes? Why government has to realize taxes? So definitely there are some objectives. Otherwise, government would not have collected taxes from the public. Number one objective is raising revenue. So if government needs revenue, government has to realize taxes. So it is the only source of government revenue from the public, because if the government wants to realize taxes from the public, it will be its own source, and government doesn't have to pay anything in exchange of that. So uh, this is without any cost. Government does not have to pay any cost for that. But if the government takes money from any other source, that means takes loan from, as I told you before, from the bank, that is the central bank or commercial banks or non-banking financial institutions, or from foreign banks, etc. Government would have to pay the cost of the money. That means interest. Government needs that. If the revenue is raised, government will have more income and government can spend more. So government does have to spend money for development purposes and revenue purposes. So all the purposes, sometimes you will see that the development expenditure is getting bigger and bigger every year, because whenever the government takes up a project, it is a development project. Maybe a factory, say for example, nuclear factory, nuclear energy factory. So it is being constructed by the government, and government needs to fund it. So sometimes government uh, takes loans from other countries, or if the government can fund it through its own sources, it is always easy. Why it is always easy to fund a project from own sources? That is also a question. It means that whenever you are taking loan from a foreign government, you have to return it. So you can return it in a number of years, but you have to pay interest along with the principal amount. So when you are paying it uh, in return of the principal or as interest, the two payments are there. Part of the principal you are paying off and interest you are paying off, but both of them are paid in foreign currency. So whenever you are paying off the loan, you have to pay off the loan in a bigger amount. And there is a fluctuation or chance of fluctuation in the value of money. That means the exchange rate fluctuation. Now, if you have taken a loan from the foreign government, it will depend on the rate of the dollar. So if the rate of the dollar is, uh, 80 taka per dollar, so your agreement is signed as per this exchange rate. But whenever you are paying it off, at that time, if you see that the rate of exchange is different, that means not 80 taka per dollar, rather it is 100 taka per dollar, then you have to pay 100 taka per dollar, because you are paying it off in dollar amount, not in taka amount. So that's why you have to pay more taka for the same dollar. So there is a risk, there is a fluctuation in the exchange rate, which is not in your favor. So that's why it is always better to fund a project with your own source of finance of the government. So that's why the government always tries to fund a project from its own source, not from foreign sources. So this is one of the questions you may be asked in the examination, why the project should be funded from the own sources of the government, not from foreign sources. So what is the disadvantage of funding a project through foreign sources or foreign funding, whatever it is? So the first objective is raising revenue. We have explained it, that raising revenue is necessary for the government for smooth administration of the country. And then number two objective is regulation of production and consumption. Regulation of production and consumption. So government needs to regulate the production and consumption. Why production should be regulated or consumption should be regulated? And it is to be regulated through taxation. So taxation policy is very important for the government to pursue, because government can regulate the consumption and production of particular products or services, whatever it is. Why is it necessary? You can say that, okay, I am producing garments, another person is producing pharmaceutical products, another person is producing sugar, another person is producing salt, whatever it is. So why should government regulate it? What is the necessity of regulating production? Is there any necessity that the government should regulate production?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. The regulation is a must, because
Yes, sir. Yes.
without any regulation, without any production, the cost, although will incur, but there will be no production. This will cost our valuable revenue. And another point is the related person may uh, misuse the resources, government resources. So that is another thing. That's it.
You can answer this question in this way. Production is to be regulated by the government, because if you produce the same thing in a larger amount or larger quantity, and if there are many people who are producing the same product or offering the same services, then what happens to it? It's a question of demand and supply. If the demand of a particular product in the country is less, and if you produce a lot that is bigger than the quantity of demand, its price will be down, and you cannot sell the product because it is more than what is demanded in the market. So that's why you must know it, that this product, whenever it is producing by a number of producers, whether it is according to the demand of the market or not. If it is not according to the demand of the market, then if it is less than the market demand, yes, you can produce it. But whenever it goes up, that means it is more than the demand in the market. In that case, the price of that product will go down. Sometimes you have to sell the product at a loss. So if you sell the product at a loss, it is not advisable for your part to continue with the production. So you must know it, and government has to control the production. That means whenever the government is giving you a license, government has to think of it that if I give the license to produce this product, the market demand is not in consistency with the supply. So government has to decide whether government will stop it or government will encourage it. And the government can do it through the taxation system. And if you want to produce a product which is not actually wanted by the government to produce, in that case, government can impose taxes on the raw materials, or VAT could be imposed on it at a higher rate. So you will not be able to match with the market demand or market price. So that in that case, you would stop producing that product. And again, the consumption could be regulated by the government. Why consumption could be regulated by the government? It is to be regulated by the government because you see sometimes the people will demand some of the products which are not actually needed for their daily livelihood. Say, for example, perfume. Perfume is not needed for your daily livelihood. You don't need it in order to survive. So if you are importing products, that means perfumes from France, you are spending foreign currency. So that foreign currency has to be paid by the government. That's why government has to reserve the foreign currency, or government has to save the foreign currency for future payment of the bills. So that's why government will regulate the production or importation of the products. So whenever you are producing, perfume in Bangladesh, you have to bring the raw materials from other countries because the concentrate has to be imported into the country. So whenever you are importing the concentrate from other countries, you must pay in dollar term. That means you have to pay in foreign currency. So that is also the spending of the foreign currency by the government. So that's why government will regulate the consumption of the products. And at the same time, government has to regulate consumption or in another way. Say, for example, the essential commodities like rice, lentil, onion, etc. Those have to be regulated by the government, whether onion has to be imported into the country or not. When there is a scarcity of onion in the country, government has to allow people, that is the importers, to buy onion from other countries because this is daily necessities. People need to use onion every day. So that's why if there is a crisis of onion in their daily livelihood, it is not very desirable. So that's why government will allow it to be imported from other countries. And the rice has to be made available all the time. If there is a problem with the production of rice in Bangladesh because of flood or any other natural calamities, in that case, government has to allow the importers to import rice from India, from Myanmar, from Thailand, etc., so that people are not deprived of the use of rice. They can find the rice available in the market, or the price of the market is not very high. So that's why this is to be regulated as well by the government. I believe it is understandable to you.
Yes, sir.
And another objective of taxation is encouraging domestic industries. Encouraging domestic industries. That means our industries, the industries which are Bangladeshi industries. More entrepreneurs in Bangladesh, they have to set up some industries with their own money. It means that if they do not set up industries with their own money, the foreign entrepreneurs would be coming into Bangladesh to set up industries. In that case, those will be owned by foreigners, not by our local people. So that's why domestic industries need to be encouraged by the government, and sometimes government actually encourages some industries to be set up in Bangladesh. So, for example, uh, we have set up pharmaceutical products industries here. You will not find any foreign pharmaceutical company working in Bangladesh, but just a few who are operating through the local entrepreneurs as well. But almost all the pharmaceutical companies are owned by our local people. And the government sector, you will see the same thing. All the government sector industries, they are owned by Bangladeshis, but a few are set up by the foreigners who have come here in the industrial zone. That means in the export processing zone, economic zone, etc. They are just operating their own industries here, but the number of foreign companies is very small. So government sometimes encourages the domestic industries to be set up. How to do that? The government actually gives them opportunities. That means the export processing zones are open to the investment, domestic as well as foreign investments. And sometimes the government encourages the local entrepreneurs to set up industries in particular regions, say, for example, in northern districts of Bangladesh, in the hilly districts of Bangladesh, and the tax holiday scheme could be offered to them. Tax holiday scheme means for a number of years, maybe for 5 years or 7 years or 9 years or 11 years, they will be exempted from payment of taxes. It means that when the company runs into operation and earns profit, they don't have to pay taxes for a number of years, and they can save the taxes. So that is a great encouragement for the entrepreneurs to set up industries in the country. So if the industries are set up in the country, it means that all these are our own companies, as well as what we can do, we can export the products to the global market and also in the domestic market. And a good number of people could be employed in that organization or company. It means that unemployment could be eliminated. So that is also one of the objectives of the government, to create employment for the unemployed youths through encouraging setting up of industries in Bangladesh. So that is also needed, and it is done through imposition of taxes or removing taxes or exempting taxes. So that is a weapon, or that is a tool through which we can ensure setting up of industries. Okay, then another objective of taxation is stimulating investment. Stimulating investment means we can encourage people to invest in the country. So if the people are not encouraged to invest in the country, they will invest in other countries, or they will just send their money to other countries or to other tax havens, what we call tax haven, say Mauritius, the Virgin Island, etc. These are the countries in which you can just keep your money, keep your capital, and you don't have to pay taxes. So that's an encouragement for the Bangladeshis who just send their money to those tax havens. So that's why investments should be stimulated. Stimulated means the government will encourage you to set up industries. That means in productive sector. So if you invest in the productive sector, it means that you can uh, earn income, you can export to the global market, as well as you can sell your products in the domestic market or in the regional market. And at the same time, you can create employment for the unemployed youths. So that's the necessity of stimulating investment by the government. And you should also know that it is not possible for the government to provide jobs to the people, because 2.5 million people are joining the employment cycle every year. And it is not possible for the government to provide jobs in the government sector. So that's why the private sector should be open or should be capable enough to create employment for those people who are not finding jobs. That means the youths, unemployed youths. So that's why government is encouraging investment in the private sector, so that your GDP, that means the gross domestic product of the country, increases, rate of GDP also increases, and the economic benefit is derived by the country. If you do not have economic benefit, in that case, the country would not be treated as a very good venue for investment for the foreigners. So that's why stimulating investment is always necessary for the government. And this is, of course, done through providing low rate of interest, that means, sorry, low rate of taxation, and also through tax exemption for a particular number of years. Okay. So this is, I believe, also clear to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, can I ask you a question,
Yes.
please? So, the government, why and where or when a business or company or entity want to be discouraged by taxation?
Can you repeat it a little bit louder? Huh?
Yes, sir.
A little bit louder.
Why? Yes, sir. Why and when? Why and when the government want to be discouraged of any business or any company or any business entities by taxation?
Yes, discourage, government can discourage any company whenever the company is trying to produce a product which is not needed in the market. You see, we have got a lot of garments factories in Bangladesh. Just this is an example. So we are exporting our products to the global market, European Union, USA, Germany, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, etc. Everywhere we are exporting our garments products. But you must know that there is a global demand. You have got a domestic demand, you have got a global demand. Global demand means the total quantity of products that is demanded in the world. So if the global demand is still there, that means, for example, there are 500 units of products of ready-made garments in the global market. This is an example. And already 490 units of products are being supplied against the total demand, global demand. So government knows it, that there is a demand for this product in the global market. So if there is a company in Bangladesh which is trying to produce the ready-made garments and trying to export the products to the global market, government can see that still the company has got a chance to export the products to the global market. But if the government sees that the global demand is 500 units and already 500 units are being supplied by all the countries of the world, so there is no demand at all. So if any company which is trying to produce the same product in Bangladesh and tries to export it to the global market, what will be the fate of that company? That company would not be able to export the product to the global market. So what the company will do? The company will try to sell the ready-made garment in the domestic market. So domestic market does not have that demand. So that's why the company will run a loss. But if the government sees that a particular product means, say for example, API, active pharmaceutical ingredients. So active pharmaceutical ingredients, sometimes it is also needed for cosmetic products. So if this product is produced in Bangladesh and could be exported to the global market, government will definitely encourage it. But as I have told you before, that if there is no global demand, government will not encourage it. And if there is a product which is actually prohibited item in the global market, if it is so, in that case, government cannot encourage a company to produce the same product because this is already prohibited in the market or this is a risky product. So government cannot encourage. So this is the example when government will be encouraging a product and government will be discouraging a product. The government can encourage the product by giving tax opportunities, that means tax exemptions, etc. And government can discourage the product by imposing taxes, a higher rate of tax, higher rate of import duty, because the ingredients could be imported into the country at a very high import duty, supplementary duty and regulatory duty. So in that case, it will not be competitive, even in the domestic market or in the global market. So that's the thing.
Thank you, sir. I'm clear. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Okay, then another objective, it could be reducing income inequalities. Reducing income inequalities means there is an inequality in income. That means I have got a certain amount of money, you have got another amount of money, and somebody else has got another income of money. So there would be a difference between the three, among the three. That means I have got a huge amount of money, you have got a very small amount of money, and another person has got a medium amount of money. So there are differences. So government can reduce that inequality. So with a huge amount of money, I can buy so many things, or I can take so many services. But if you have a small amount of money, you cannot buy so many things, or you cannot receive services from different companies in that way. It's not possible because your income is not that high. So that's why you cannot offer. And when a third person is there who is with a reasonable amount of money, but it is not high, it is not low. So that's why he can also maintain a standard of living, of course. But how to reduce inequality? When I have got huge amount of money, I can buy anything. I can buy a piece of land with a certain amount of money, which is very high, but you cannot do that because your amount is not that high. So whenever I can offer a higher price, in that case, the seller will definitely sell the product to me, not to you. And sometimes when I have more money, or there are some people like me who can offer very good prices for the products in the market, in that case, the price of the products in the market will rise. That means, very simple example, if you go to a market, say village market, I would say, and there are hilsa fish there, and there are many rich people in that area. So when there are many rich people in that area, they can offer very good prices for the hilsa fish, and the price of hilsa fish would rise. And normal people who have got normal income, They cannot buy the Hilsha fish at a higher price. So that's why what happens? Those people will be deprived of the Hilsha fish. And inflation would be there. Inflation would be there means they will not be able to buy Hilsha fish. Same case could be applied to a piece of land. That means when there is a piece of land in that area, the wealthy people or the rich people can buy the piece of land at a higher price, and the offer would be much higher than what you can do. So in that case, what happens? You cannot buy the piece of land. Rather, the rich people can buy the piece of land. So what does it indicate? It indicates that uh, there is an inequality of income among the people. So what government can do? Government can impose taxes on the incomes of the people. Those people who have got higher income have to pay higher taxes. And those people who have got lower income, they have to pay less tax. So in that way, it could be equalized. Equalized means the people who are having a lot of income would pay taxes at a higher rate, very high rate. And the people who don't have that amount of money as income, they can pay very low taxes. So in that way, the government can equalize the income. That means reducing the inequalities. And also, government can apply another strategy. Another strategy means people who are living in a particular area would be able to pay taxes at a lower rate. So, for example, in the hilly districts of Bangladesh, those who are involved in economic activities, especially the tribal people, they don't have to pay taxes for their businesses. So that is an advantage given to them, so that they are encouraged to participate in the business or participate in some economic activities. Otherwise, they won't be participating in the economic activities. So this is an example of reducing the inequalities of income. Is it okay for you? If it is okay, then we move to another objective, which is called promoting economic growth. So objective of taxation could be promoting economic growth. Whenever economic growth is needed, economic growth means you will have your GDP at a higher amount. Rate of GDP should be higher. Per capita income should also be higher. And how to do that? If your production is high, yes, your GDP would be higher. If your income is high, that is, you are earning income, it will also add to GDP. If you have foreign remittance, that means you are working in another country and sending money to Bangladesh. In that case, the GDP will also be higher. And if you invest your capital in the productive sector, definitely this will increase production. This will increase employment generation. So people who will be employed in that factory will also be earning from the company, and their income will also be added to the GDP. That means gross domestic product. So in that case, your economic growth will be increasing. So that is one of the objectives, that government can formulate a policy of taxation, and that policy should be in favor of promoting economic growth. So government will encourage production, government will encourage sending money by the expatriate Bangladeshis to Bangladesh. Government is paying, some incentives to the remitters. That means the expatriate Bangladeshis who are sending money to Bangladesh are given some incentives. So that is also an encouragement from the side of the government in order to encourage the people to send their money to Bangladesh through banking channel. And all these are actually ensuring economic growth. So your investment, your income, your production, your export, your remittance, all these are part of the economic growth. Whenever you are exporting, yes, you are earning foreign currency. So foreign currency means the central bank is getting a reserve of foreign currency at a higher amount, which could be utilized in future for payment of the import bills, etc. So all these contribute to economic growth. Then another objective of taxation is development of backward regions. Development of backward regions means in Bangladesh, all the regions of the country are not equal. So if you see Dhaka zone, if you see Naranganj, if you see Gazipur, if you see Norsingdi, these are, I would say, forward zones. But if you go to northern Bengal, maybe Dinajpur area, Panchagod area, all these are not as equal as these areas are, as I have mentioned to you. So what should be done? In the past, you would have seen that there was no export processing zone in the northern districts. So nowadays, we have got one export processing zone in the northern district, which is called Uttara Export Processing Zone. Uttara Export Processing Zone has created an opportunity for the investors and people from other countries, as well as from the from our own country. They are going to that export processing zone so that they can set up their plants in that export processing zone and export to the global market. So when you have invested in that export processing zone, you have been given a piece of land for setting up your industry at a very concessional price. And you have been given a tax holiday scheme. That means you don't have to pay taxes when you are exporting your products to the global market and earning foreign currency for a number of years, of course. And the government has given you facilities in order to transport the products from Uttara Export Processing Zone to Chittagong, so that you can load your products in the ship and send it to a particular destination. So like this, there are other export processing zones which have been set up in other parts of the country, and all these export processing zones have given an opportunity to the country for development, because when there is an export processing zone, there would be so many people employed in that factory, and there would be roads and highways for transportation of the products. And of course, there are other facilities to be developed, like a hospital, like a school, etc., which should be developed nearby, so that the people who are working in that industry would be able to enjoy the facilities for their children in the schools, or receiving treatment in the hospitals for their family members. So all these are the developments, infrastructural development to be set up because of the setting up of the industries in a particular area. And in that way, you can attract foreign direct investment as well, because people would also be interested from other countries to set up factories in that particular area in order to receive the benefits given by the government. And the next objective of taxation should be ensuring price stability. You have to ensure the price stability. Price stability means when the price of particular product or products is not stable, then it creates a problem for the consumers. So whenever we see that a price of a particular product is increasing day by day, in that case, people would be very uncomfortable with the purchase of that particular product. Sometimes the products are very essential for day-to-day use, like salt, like sugar. All these products are needed every day, and that's why people have to buy it, whatever the price is. So the demand for that product is inelastic. Inelastic means you have to buy the product, whatever the price is. So what you can do then, if the price is not stable, this is a problem for the people. And also, if the price rises, the limited income people, they have got some tension because they cannot afford to buy the product at a higher price. So that's why government can stabilize the price by importing the product through the Trading Corporation of Bangladesh. The Trading Corporation of Bangladesh is a government organ, and government can buy the product from another country through this organ. So whenever government is buying the product into the country, in that case, the producers of that product will not be able to increase the price according to their whim. So you say ensuring price stability for the sake of the people, for the welfare of the people is very much needed by the government, and government has to apply that. And definitely government will apply that. And this could be done through taxation, because whenever the production of a particular product is monopolized, that means the price is monopolized by some producers. In that case, government can buy the product or import the product, and government can actually remove the import duty. When the import duty is imposed on a particular product, it could be removed. And in that case, the product should be very much competitive. And sometimes the producer will run a loss if they increase the price. So that's why they have to stabilize the price, or they have to accept or fix the price at a rate which is reasonable for the public to buy. So these are the objectives what we have explained here. And I believe you have understood those objectives, and you should keep in your mind the objectives that we have discussed. Any question from your side? No question? Any break needed for you?
No, sir.
Yes. Whether any break is needed for you or not.
স্যার নামাজের জন্য 10 মিনিট ব্রেক দিলে ভালো হতো।
Okay. So let us meet after 15 minutes.
Okay,
Okay,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Okay, sir.
Is it okay?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
জুয়েল ভাই, আমাদের হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ কি কোনো গ্রুপ খোলা হয়েছে নাকি আমাদের?
আমাদের গ্রুপ এইটাই আছে, আর কোনো গ্রুপ নেই। এটাতেই সবকিছু আপডেট
বলতে
দেওয়া।
চাচ্ছিলাম যে আমাদের যে ইয়েগুলো হয়, ক্লাসগুলো হয়, এগুলা কি আমাদের হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ বা অন্য কোনো গ্রুপে যদি আমরা অ্যাড হয়ে সবাই একটু শেয়ার করি?
যে ক্লাসগুলো হয়েছিল এবং যেগুলো আমাকে আইসিবি থেকে প্রোভাইড করেছিল সবগুলোই হচ্ছে আমি আগামীকাল সবাইকে যার যার পার্সোনাল মেইলে প্রোভাইড করে দেব। আমি লাস্ট 2 ডেজ হচ্ছে ইয়েতে ছিলাম, আউট অফ ঢাকা, এই জন্য আমি সবাইকে দিতে পারি না। এক্সট্রিমলি সরি ফর দ্যাট। আমি আগামীকাল সবাইকে দিয়ে দেবো ইনশাআল্লাহ। সবাইকে 11 তারিখ থেকে 16 তারিখ পর্যন্ত আমাদের যে ক্লাসগুলো নিয়েছে সবগুলোর রেকর্ড আমাকে দিয়েছে। আমি সবাইকে আগামীকাল দিয়ে দেবো। সবার মেইল আমার কাছে আছে, সবার মেইলে দিয়ে দেবো।
থ্যাংক ইউ ভাইয়া।
হ্যালো জুয়েল ভাই।
ইয়েস,
হ্যালো
বলেন। ইয়েস, বলেন।
জুয়েল মঞ্জু ভাই, ভালো আছেন?
হ্যাঁ, আলহামদুলিল্লাহ। আপনি কেমন আছেন?
জি ভাই ভালো। ওই যে ক্লাস ম্যাটেরিয়াল গুলো আমার পাচ্ছিলাম না ভাই, একটা তো ক্লাস ম্যাটেরিয়াল পাচ্ছিলাম না।
আমি আহ, কালকে দিয়ে দিব সবাইকে। 120 জনের মেইলই আমার কাছে আছে। 120 জন সবাই পাবে আগামীকাল। সবাইকে দিয়ে দিব।
জি জুয়েল ভাই, জি 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 দিলে
ঠিক
ভালো
আছে,
হয়,
ঠিক আছে,
আমাদের জন্য সুবিধা হয়। থ্যাংক ইউ ভাই, থ্যাংক ইউ ভাই।
ঠিক আছে।
তবে জুয়েল ভাই, আমাদের হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ একটা গ্রুপ খুললে ভালো হয়, আমরা একটু চ্যাট করে মতামত গুলা জানতাম।
হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে তো গ্রুপ আছে, আমাদের গ্রুপে অ্যাড নাই আপনি?
না ভাই, আমি অ্যাড নাই, এই জন্য বললাম আর কি, ফার্স্ট টাইম।
আপনি অ্যাড নাই। আপনার রোল নাম্বার কত?
আর 34,000, সরি,
লাস্ট লাস্ট কত? লাস্ট
লাস্ট হচ্ছে 73।
73 না? 73। ঠিক আছে, আমি এটা অ্যাড করে নেব। 73 আমি অ্যাড করে নেব কালকে, হ্যাঁ? আচ্ছা, আপনি এখনই আপনার নাম্বারটা দেন, আমি অ্যাড করে নিচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা
আপনার নাম্বারটা এখনই দেন, আমি অ্যাড করে নিচ্ছি। আমার হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ আপনি দেন। হ্যাঁ, আপনি এটাতে দিয়ে দেন, আমি অ্যাড করে নিচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে।
এটাতে হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ করে দেন, হ্যাঁ?
I hope everybody is back. We can continue. So now we'd like to discuss types of taxes, mainly direct tax and indirect tax. So generally you will be asked with this question. What is the direct tax? So the answer is direct tax is that tax whose burden is borne by the same person on whom it is levied. That means when the tax is levied on a particular person, he has to bear the burden of the tax. That means he has to pay the tax himself. So if I earn income, I am drawing a salary from the company or from a bank or any other institution, and on that income tax is imposed and I have to pay the taxes myself. That means nobody else should be paying the taxes on my behalf. So this is called direct tax, and the best example of direct tax is income tax. And an indirect tax is one whose burden is passed on to others and ultimately to the consumers. That means whenever we buy a product from the supermarket, so for example, Mina Bazaar, we are buying a product from the Mina Bazaar and we have to pay the price of the particular product, and VAT, that means value added tax, is imposed on that. And who is bearing this burden? The burden is borne by the purchaser himself. That means the consumer. And Mina Bazaar is not bearing that burden, but the consumer is bearing the burden. So it means that it is passed on to others. And if you look at the importation of a product, that means I am importing a product from another country. So maybe it's a machinery and I am buying the machinery at a certain price. So for example, 10,000 US dollar. And that price is being paid to the seller of that particular country. When the product enters into Bangladesh, importer, he has to pay the duty on that, that is the import duty. So let us suppose that the import duty is 10%, and US dollar 10,000 is the price of the machinery, and 10%, that means 1,000 US dollar is added to that, which means the price of the product becomes 11,000 US dollar. So although the importer is paying the import duty, that means the customs duty by himself, but he is not actually paying the duty because he is selling the product to the wholesaler, and wholesaler is paying 11,000 US dollar plus a certain percentage of profit. If it is another 10%, then it should be 1,100. So the wholesaler is paying the price to the importer 12,100. So the importer is not bearing any indirect tax. It is being passed on to others, and ultimately it will be passed on to the consumer. Consumer means when the person concerned will be buying the machinery for the factory. So the wholesaler would be selling the product to the retailer, and retailer will buy it from the wholesaler, and he will also pay him the full price, including a certain percentage of profit. So 11,000, 1,000, 11,100 plus maybe another 10%. So it could be another 1,110, something like that. So he will be paying 12,210 or something like that. So it means that the retailer is paying the price for the product, for the he is also paying the import duty, he is also paying the profit, whatever it is, to the wholesaler, and again he is now selling the product to the purchaser, that is the consumer, and consumer has to pay the full amount of the purchase price plus the profit plus duty, etc., whatever it is. So in that way, the example is that the price of the product is being passed on to the consumer, and this is a very good example for indirect tax. So import duty is an indirect tax, VAT, and what we have said before, the income tax, that is a direct tax. So that's the difference between the two. When the burden of tax is borne by the payer himself, it's a direct tax. And when the burden of tax is not borne by the payer himself, rather it is passed on to others and ultimately to the consumer, that is an indirect tax. So we can differentiate between the two like this. Now the question is, every country has to have a very good taxation system. And this is very much needed because every country needs to realize tax revenue from the people, and there should be some principles of a good taxation system. The taxation system should be good. It should not be bad, or it should not be burdensome. Rather, it should be people friendly. So we have to formulate the policy, good taxation policy in that way. So let us first see the principles of a good taxation system. These principles are called sometimes maxims. So it has got some characteristics. A system should have some characteristics. And if we look at the past, that is the history of the taxation system, we have to look at one economist who is called Adam Smith. Adam Smith is the father of the taxation system, and he was a Scottish economist, and he was also a Nobel laureate, and he just introduced the founding principles of a good taxation system. He wrote a book on the taxation system, which is called An Enquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations. So that book was published in 1776, and the founding principles of a good taxation system are written in that book, and every country is following those principles. So these are also called Smithian canons, Smithian canons, after the name of Mr. Adam Smith. And he actually formulated four principles. Four principles are the canon of equality, the canon of certainty, the canon of convenience, and the canon of economy. These are the four principles of a good taxation system. So afterwards, many other economists, they added some of the principles to the founding principles. And those principles are also in existence or in practice in many countries of the world. But the founding principles are followed by each and every country. And in Bangladesh, we also follow the founding principles. So first of all, we would like to discuss canon of equality. And by canon of equality, it does not mean that everybody has to pay taxes equally. Rather, everybody has to pay taxes according to their ability. So if you have the ability to pay taxes, you will pay taxes accordingly. If you do not have the ability, you won't pay taxes. It means that when the income is higher, you have to pay taxes. Or if the income crosses the limit, that is the general exemption limit, you know the general exemption limit, which is called minimum income, which you have to cross. So let us suppose Taka 3 lakh. If you have Taka 3 lakh as an individual, you do not have to pay taxes, but if you cross that limit, you have to pay taxes. So this exemption limit is called general exemption limit. So if your income increases after that limit, that means if you have an income of 10 lakh taka, you have to pay taxes at a certain rate. But if you have an income of 50 lakhs taka, you need to pay taxes at a higher rate. So something like that. And this principle is also called pay as you earn. That means as you pay, as you will earn. Or if you earn, you will pay. As per your earning, you have to pay. So PAYE, this is called pay as you earn. In other words, this is also called equality sacrifice theory, equality of sacrifice theory. Adam Smith actually introduced that one, and he gave one example that everybody does not have to pay tax at the same rate. So it is also not possible, and it is also not the principle of paying taxes. So he says that if your income is taka 50, and if you pay taxes at the rate of 10%, you have to pay taxes at taka 5. But if you have an income of taka 500, and if you pay taxes at the same rate, then you have to pay taxes at taka 50. So it means that when the rate of tax is same for different income groups, the equality of sacrifice theory is not effected. So he has given one example, that is taka 5 out of taka 50 and taka 50 out of taka 500 is not the same. So from the sacrifice point of view, these two figures are not similar. It is very difficult for the person to pay taxes at taka 5 out of taka 50. Then the person who are paying taxes at taka 50 out of taka 500, it is much easier for him. So the question of equality of sacrifice is there. Whenever your income is higher, you have to pay taxes at a higher rate. And whenever your income is lower, you have to pay taxes at a lower rate. That should be the principle, which is also called the progressive system of taxation. Progressive system of taxation. So when we say progressive rate of taxation, it means that as the income increases, the rate of taxes would be higher. As the income decreases, the rate of taxes would be lower. But in our country, what we see here, we see a little bit different because as your income increases, you are paying taxes at a higher rate. But after a certain point, you are paying taxes at the same rate. Because the maximum rate of tax in Bangladesh for individuals is 25%. So 25% means after a certain limit, as I have told you, and when you are having income at certain figures, and I am also having income at certain figures, but we are paying taxes at the same rate, that is at 25%, it means that the rate of taxation is not progressive, rather this is proportional. So the tax rate in Bangladesh starts with 5%, then 10%, then 15%, then 20%, then 25%. So whenever it is 25%, it means that everybody is paying taxes at 25%. So that becomes proportional. But before that, it is progressive. So we have got a taxation system which is both progressive and proportional. So if you are asked about the system of taxation in Bangladesh, he will answer that the system of taxation in Bangladesh is both progressive and proportional. So that could be the answer. Number two principle should be a canon of certainty. And canon of certainty means that tax has to be certain and arbitrary. A person should know what, when, and how the taxes should be paid by him. It means that I should know when I have to pay the taxes and at what rate I have to pay the taxes and on which income or what quantum of income I have to pay taxes. Because if I know that if I have an income of taka 3 lakhs per year, then I don't have to pay taxes. But if I cross that limit, say for example, I have got an income of taka 4 lakh, then I have to pay taxes at the rate of 5% on the amount exceeding taka 3 lakhs. So that should be known to me. How to know it? It has to be known to me through the Finance Act. That means the National Board of Revenue, they have actually given data or they have amended the Income Tax Ordinance 1984 through that Finance Act, and it's known to me. So I would be able to prepare my return, that is return of income, for submission before the Deputy Commissioner of Taxes. And I know that I have to submit the return by the 30th day of November because that is the tax day. And any time before that day, I can submit the return. So in that case, I know that I have to prepare it accordingly. What the Income Tax Ordinance suggests or what the Finance Act suggests. So in that way, I can prepare everything and I can pay the taxes which is due for payment. And sometimes you will see that whenever you have earned your income, that is salary, tax was deducted at source, but there might be some outstanding figure, and that figure could also be paid by you during this period. So it is certain. And I know what I have to pay and what is the rate of tax. Everything is known to me. So that's why the principle of canon of certainty is there. It has been met by the income tax authority. And then the principle is canon of convenience. That means every tax has to be levied at the time or in the manner in which it is most likely to be convenient to pay it. For example, land revenue has to be realized after harvest has been collected. So this is an example. That means whenever tax is realized from the land revenue, that is the landowners or the cultivators or the agriculturists, it means that whenever harvest is completed or harvest is collected by them and they sell the produce in the market afterwards, the tax is collected from them. Not before that, because that is the time when they have got money in their hands and they can pay it off. So same case is to other people who are working with the government or with the corporations or companies, etc. They know that the financial year is complete by the end of June. That means by the 30th day of June. So everything is closed. The books of accounts are also closed. So they can calculate the amount that they have to pay as taxes for the previous year. Previous year means the income year. So it is to be collected by the 30th day of November, because during this period they can prepare themselves in order to make payment of the taxes. So the example that has been given, it was given in order to give an insight how the tax was collected from the people having agricultural income. So it was done in that way that the time when harvest is collected by the farmers or by the landowners, then that is the proper time to demand, land taxes. So this principle is called canon of convenience. And again, the founding principle of Mr. Adam Smith is canon of equity. Canon of equity. The cost of collection, the canon of economy. The cost of collection of taxes should be as small as possible. So if the bulk or tax is spent on its collection, it will not be economical for the government. That means if you spend a huge amount of money for realizing revenue, that is not actually favorable for the government. Rather, the government wants that the minimum expenditure should be incurred in order to realize the taxes from the people. So that's why the canon of economy is to be followed by the taxation department. So you will see that there are not many people in the taxation department or in a circle realizing taxes. So the number of people is very limited. It is because of the fact that the government does not want to spend much money on realization of taxes. So these are the 4 principles introduced by Mr. Adam Smith. But as I told you before, that other economists after Mr. Adam Smith, they actually followed some other principles. So another principle that was added to the founding principles of Mr. Adam Smith was canon of productivity. So what is canon of productivity? A tax should bring in a substantial amount of money to the state exchequer. That means canon of productivity explains that the tax should be substantially collected. That means the amount of tax should be substantial in order to inflate the state of exchequer. So the tax should not be kept as minimum as possible. Rather, it should be enhanced or it should be increased for the requirement of the government. So could be substantial sometimes in order to fund the government developmental and revenue expenditure. So that is called canon of productivity. And then canon of elasticity. Canon of elasticity points out that a tax should automatically bring in more revenue as the country's population or income increases. If in an emergency, an increase in the rate of taxes brings in increased income, then the tax is elastic. It means that when the number of people would be more and more in the country, it is expected that the tax revenue would also be increased. And whenever there would be more income of the people or more income of the companies or corporate sector, the tax should also be higher. And in case of any emergency, the rate of taxes should be increased by the government. That means if there is a famine, if there is an earthquake, if there is flood, etc., or any other natural calamity in the country, in that case, government should be able to increase the rate of taxes, or government can increase some, surcharges, etc., so that government can bear the expenditure for the loss of the country or for the loss of a particular sector. Sometimes when the crop is actually destroyed by a flood or any other calamity, in that case, a surcharge could be imposed on the taxpayers so that a higher amount of revenue could be realized by the government in order to meet the expenditure or to just make up the loss. Then another principle is canon of Simplicity. Canon of simplicity indicates that the taxation system should be simple as possible, because everybody thinks that the taxation system is very complex in our country, and it is not only in our country but in other countries as well. The fiscal law is always a little bit difficult. So this taxation law is definitely fiscal law, and the law is a little bit complex to explain. So general people who do not have the capacity to understand the law cannot realize how they should pay taxes or why the taxes is imposed in that way. So the underlying principle is that this law should be made as simple as possible, so that people could understand why they are paying taxes at a certain rate on a certain level of income, or in a certain sector they have to pay taxes at certain rates. And if the law is complicated, in that case the lawyers, the advocates, the income tax practitioners, chartered accountants, or cost and management accountants, etc., anybody who is not that honest can take advantage of it. Even the deputy commissioner of taxes or the inspectors of taxes, they can also take advantage of the situation. That is the situation of complications. So the people could be, cheated. So that's why if it is made simple, the taxpayers would be able to understand why they are paying a certain amount of tax, and why they are paying simple interest, why they are paying penalty, etc., etc. So they could be able to understand. Then another principle could be canon of variety. Canon of variety means tax system should be diversified. Reliance on just a few taxes is risky. There should be a wide coverage of our commodities and persons. So it means that you should not stick to just a few taxes. Rather, the taxes should be very varied in nature. Varied in nature means there should be a number of taxes in existence in the country. That means should be income tax, should be gift tax, should be estate duty, should be VAT, should be customs duty, regulatory duty, supplementary duty, etc., etc. There could be a number of taxes, so that if one sector does not perform very well, other sectors could be used to compensate the loss of another sector. So that's why taxes should be of different types. Then another principle should be canon of flexibilities. Canon of flexibilities means the absence of rigidity in the tax system. A flexible tax system quickly adjusts to the new conditions. Elasticity means income can be increased, whereas presence of flexibility is a precondition for elasticity, meaning that there should not be any rigidity in the taxation system, that tax system should be rigid. It should not be rigid, it should be flexible. That means it could be adjusted to the changing circumstances. If you see that a particular country is adopting a policy so that its exports could be enhanced, so our country should also adopt that policy, because if we restrict the production of a particular product, or if we stick to imposing a higher amount of tax on a particular product or particular income of a sector, in that case, they cannot compete with its competitors from other countries. So that's why we need to adjust it. That means sometimes the tax on a particular product could be reduced to zero, or could be reduced to a minimal amount of money, or could be enhanced to a certain amount of higher money. So that should be the principle of flexibility. So in that case, we can actually meet the requirements of the global market, and we can also encourage our producers or our exporters in order to compete with other producers from different regions. Okay. So the tax GDP ratio in Bangladesh is very low compared to other countries of the world. It is less than 10%. This should be enhanced because if we want to ensure economic growth of the country, then tax GDP ratio should be much higher. And it should be a standard figure, which should be at least 20% in Bangladesh. But it is very low. That means 9.3% at this point of time. So that's why we have to take the measures. That means government is taking measures in order to enhance the tax GDP ratio. And direct taxes should be given importance, but the customs duty, that is not to be given that importance as the income tax, because customs duty is different and it actually affects the consumers directly. So that's why in every country there is a provision that customs duty should be kept as minimal as possible. And apart from that, the other taxes should be enhanced, like income tax, VAT, etc. So the next point we'll discuss is nature of direct taxes. What is the nature of the direct taxes in Bangladesh? So we know that the taxation system could be proportional, could be progressive, could be regressive. So there are three types of taxation system in our country. But in Bangladesh, as we discussed before, the taxation system is progressive initially, but afterwards it becomes proportional. So it is a mixture, or it's a blend of proportional and progressive taxation system in Bangladesh. If you look at the slabs of income, let us suppose 2021 assessment year. If we look at that, we see that the first slab of taka 3 lakh, there is no tax. That means 0% of taxes there. Afterwards, that means next 1 lakh taka after 3 lakh, the tax rate is 5%. And again, next 3 lakh taka after 1 lakh, it is 10%. And afterwards, that means next 4 lakh, it becomes 15%. And then again, next 5 lakh taka, it becomes 20%. And if you just cross that limit, in that case, any income, it should be at the rate of 25%. So that is the highest rate of tax that should be imposed on the incomes of an individual. And we understand that this is proportional tax. But if we say regressive tax rate, it means that whenever the income of an individual or a firm or a Hindu undivided family or an association of persons increases, the tax rate should be decreased. That means when an individual is earning more and more money, his payment of taxes or rate of taxes should be decreased. So that is regressive rate of taxation. But here in Bangladesh, we do not have regressive rate of taxation. Rather, we have got proportional rate of taxation. Okay. So next point of discussion is that tax is collected from the revenue, we have said before, and the receipt and the expenditure that has to be taken into account. and on the capital receipt, whether we have to pay taxes or not. Generally, on the capital receipt, we don't have to pay taxes on that. Rather, if we have a revenue receipt, we have to pay taxes on that. So whatever income we are earning, it means we can earn income through our salaries, through operation of business, through professional consultancy, or any other source, whatever it is. All these are actually sources of revenue. So when this is a revenue receipt, we are paying taxes on that. But if we have a capital receipt, we don't have to pay taxes on that until or unless it is prescribed in the income tax ordinance. So what is a capital receipt and what is a revenue receipt? That should be distinguished by you. And you know, capital expenditure and revenue expenditure, that should also be distinguished. So what is capital expenditure? Capital expenditure is an expenditure that will last for long, and it's a permanent nature of expenditure, or it is actually paid for funds to buy an asset which will be in operation in the business for a longer period. That means the machinery is purchased by a business, and the payment that has been made for the purchase of the machinery would be treated as a capital expenditure. And this capital expenditure will not be charged in the profit and loss account. Whenever the business will be preparing the profit and loss account, the capital expenditure will be excluded. Rather, only the revenue expenditure should be incorporated into the profit and loss account. So what about the treatment of the capital expenditure? So the machinery has been purchased by the business, and the amount of machinery, that means the capital that has been invested in the machinery, should be charged against the profit in the form of depreciation. That means the lifetime of the machinery has to be calculated first, and the total expenditure of the machinery has to be divided into number of years, and a particular segment of the capital has to be treated in the profit and loss account. So that is a way, but it is not actually taxed. But revenue expenditure, that has to be charged in the profit and loss account, and that should be deducted from the revenue, and the net profit has to be calculated, or net income has to be calculated later on which the tax has to be paid. So as I have said to you, that tax should be paid on the revenue receipt. And revenue receipt, what we have said before is that your income from salary will be revenue receipt, your consultancy fee will be revenue receipt, your business income would be revenue receipt, and all these would be taxed by the taxation department, and you have to pay taxes according to the rate which is actually suggested by the Finance Act every year. It could be changed or it could not be changed, whatever it is. Whenever you are just charging the expenditure, you have to keep in mind whether this is a revenue expenditure, or how to distinguish between the capital expenditure and the revenue expenditure. Say, for example, the repair to a machinery. This repair could be treated as a revenue expenditure, but whenever a substantial part is added to the machinery, that part could be treated as capital expenditure, could not be treated as a revenue expenditure. So that should be kept in mind in order to distinguish between the two. And if you say that you have received a gift from your father-in-law, or from your father, or from your spouse, etc., so that is a capital receipt that should not be taxed. But if you receive something which is not of capital nature, then definitely it could be treated as a revenue receipt on which you have to pay taxes. But whenever it's a capital receipt, you don't have to pay taxes. If you take a loan from your personal friend or from your relatives, you don't have to pay taxes on that, because this is a loan. So that's not a revenue receipt. So these are to be given due importance in distinguishing a particular receipt. So all these are to be treated properly so that your preparation of accounts for yourself or for the company or from your business concern would be fair and according to our according to the income tax ordinance. So that is the main essence of our class today. And you should also know about the company's capital expenditure. It is for operation of the assets, operation of the plants, operation of the building, etc. It could be for your royalty. I believe sometimes there are some complicated issues with regard to the patent, copyright, etc. Goodwill is also there. Goodwill is also an asset which is of permanent nature, but it is intangible asset, we should say. And there are some issues like debt financing and equity financing to cover the substantial costs involved in acquiring major assets for expanding their business. So this is also a matter which you should take into account. What the fund you are utilizing on behalf of the company, whether you are utilizing the debt financing or whether utilizing the equity financing. That creates a difference between the strength of the business. That means equity strength, or if debt is much higher than equity, then the weakness of the company is reflected in the financial statements, etc. That has to be given due importance while preparing the statement or while calculating the earning ratio, etc. So those are the issues you know very well, because as a chartered accountant, you will also study the finance, business finance, and business finance, of course, gives you an opportunity to study all these issues, how the assets to be evaluated, and how the cost of capital has to be determined, or how the earning per share has to be calculated, and what are the factors that would contribute to the evaluation of earning per share, etc., etc. So those are the issues that have to be taken into account while studying income tax, because some of the issues are related to finance, some of the issues are related to accounting. So I believe we have just given you some ideas about the first class, and in the second class, maybe if you have any question to ask me, you can ask me question, or you can just send questions to me as well through the student counseling department. They can give you my email address, so you can ask me question if you want to, and I can answer the questions through email when needed. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay then. So we can stop here because it's already 10 o'clock. We can stop. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. খুব ভালো লেগেছে স্যার আপনার ক্লাস। Thank you, sir.
Okay, well,
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
again.